Good evening, everyone. How are we doing today? Are we blessed to be here? Good evening to everyone online as well. We wanted to say welcome. We are here for our Wednesday night, night number 4 of our Reversing Debilitating Chronic Diseases. And tonight we're going to discuss smoking and heart health. We started out with our 8 laws of health, and we moved into diabetes. Last night was cancer prevention and early detection. And tonight we're going to take a look at smoking and how that affects our hearts. So if you'll bow your heads with me, we'll have a word of prayer. Gracious Father in heaven, we just thank you again for the opportunity to come before you. We thank you for the opportunity to share the message of health. Jesus said that he came that people would have life, but not just have life, have it more abundantly. And Father, in your word, that's what you share with us. And so when we follow the laws of health, when we listen to your teachings, we can have that more abundant life. And so as we hear our presentation this evening, I pray that your Spirit will be with us and that you will guide us into all truth and that we will hear and understand. I pray these things in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Sister Patricia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I want to just give a brief introduction. I'm a nurse for, I graduated in 1990. I've been a nurse for quite a while. I went back to school a few years ago to become a nurse practitioner, and since then I've been working in cardiovascular medicine. So this topic was very near and dear to my heart. I have it often with patients, and I'm hoping that you will be blessed by the information that I had researched and can impart to you, and hopefully if you don't necessarily need it for yourself, you can use it for somebody whom you love or to help others in maintaining their overall health. Okay, so a lot of us know that smoking is not good for us. Most people really focus on the lungs, the pulmonary disease that ensues from that, the lung cancer. Tonight, I'm not negating that fact, but actually smoking is worse for your cardiovascular health, and that's really where I want to hit home tonight. So my aim today will be to provide a brief overview of the effects of cigarette smoking on overall cardiovascular health. I'm not just talking about heart attacks. I'm talking about the entire cardiovascular system, which goes beyond just the actual heart itself. And we'll discuss that in a little bit. So what exactly are we going to talk about? First, we'll discuss smoking-related statistics. That's very important. Also, we're going to identify how smoking can damage the cardiovascular system. Then we're going to move on to explaining the dangers of secondhand smoke, as that's for people who are in a household who smoke, thinking that it doesn't affect the others. It absolutely does. And last but not least, we'll talk about benefits of smoking cessation. So first, I wanted to talk a little bit about smoking-related statistics. These were 2017 statistics I had looked up, and number one, I think, is really important, and the first thing I do when I talk to a patient who's a smoker, I say, smoking is the number 1 preventable death in the United States. That, to me, is an awe-striking statistic. Of anything that we can prevent, smoking is the number 1 thing that could improve your health. That's really all you have to do is stop smoking, and that's the number 1 thing you can do to improve it. So that's a really great statistics I like to use. So who's actually smoking in the U.S.? 14% of adults aged greater than or equal to 18 years of age, men more than women. The highest number of smokers reside in the Midwest and in the South. Smoking rates are highest among those with lower education and lower income levels, which surprises me because how can they afford to pay for cigarettes? But that's another topic. So mostly, the majority of smokers They begin before age 25 years of age, which is why this topic is really important to hit the younger kids. And 27% of high school students report consuming tobacco products. 5.9% of those use smokeless tobacco. I think that statistic is a little higher now, given vaping. But that's 27%. That's huge. That's more than a quarter of high school students have dabbled with it. So what's the cost of smoking? This, to me, was amazing. So in 2019, the largest tobacco companies spent $8.2 billion in marketing cigarettes and smokeless tobacco in the United States. That amounts to about $22.5 million each day, which is $1 million every hour. That's just to market their product. And we're going to learn what their product does to us. Other dollars that we need to look at is the actual cost, the overall burden of the economic burden of smoking on the healthcare system. So the healthcare costs annually are $240 billion. Lost productivity is another factor to consider. $185 billion in lost productivity from smoking-related illnesses and health conditions annually, and then nearly $180 billion from smoking-related premature death. So this is not a cost we can really afford. $7 billion also from premature death from secondhand smoke exposure. So we would like to try and mitigate that cost by discussing what we can do. So what is actually in a cigarette? Okay, when I looked this up, I thought, okay, I knew a few things in there, but when I started looking at the other stuff in there, I thought, this is disgusting. And I don't know if when people start smoking that they consider exactly what it is they're putting in their body. So there are nearly 600 additives of cigarettes that, when burned, create greater than 7,000 chemicals, at least 69 of which are known carcinogens or cause cancer. So these include the first three we all know. It's the others that you may not know. Nicotine, which is the addictive agent in cigarettes that keeps people coming back for more. The other one, when it burns, it creates tar and it deposits in our lungs. Tar is what we use to pave roads, shouldn't really be in our lungs. And carbon monoxide, it's in car exhaust fumes, but that's also part of what we inhale when we smoke. All these other, formaldehyde, naphthalene, I mean, that's mothballs. Arsenic, rat poison, ammonia, that's kind of what we use to clean things, and benzene, which is a known carcinogen. Those are all just a few of the chemicals that are in cigarettes. Something we really should not be putting in our bodies. So next I'm going to segue into smoking and cardiovascular disease. So it's important to point out that when we talk about cardiovascular disease, it refers to multiple conditions affecting the heart and the blood vessels, and these conditions include, so it's throughout the whole body. Our blood vessels are throughout our entire body. It's not just the heart. Yes, the heart is an important aspect of it, but as we'll see, there are other aspects that are affected by the smoking. Coronary artery disease, that's the one on the heart. That's narrowing of the blood vessels that carry blood specifically to the heart muscle. When that's impeded, that's called a heart attack or myocardial infarction. We can also have strokes. Those are the blood vessels that supply blood to the brain. Hypertension is affected by smoking. That's also known as high blood pressure. And also peripheral arterial disease. We're going to go through each one of these and discuss exactly the mechanism by which smoking affects that particular part of the body. Last but not least, aneurysms. That is a bulge or a weakness in an artery. So first off, atherosclerosis. that smoking cigarettes can cause changes in the blood chemistry that cause plaque to build up inside the arteries, leading to narrowing of the vessel, and that's what's called atherosclerosis. It increases inflammatory markers, which increases the buildup of plaque. So if you like to eat your Whataburger and you like to smoke, you're going to build your rate of atherosclerosis at a much more rapid rate than those who don't smoke. So narrowing of the artery, or atherosclerosis, leads to coronary artery disease, carotid stenosis, and peripheral arterial disease. So what does an increase in atherosclerosis do? How does it actually affect our body? This is a really busy picture, but I like it because it gives a big overview over exactly what parts of the cardiovascular system are affected. So cerebrovascular disease, these are strokes, or what's called TIAs, the mini strokes. Also, you can have dementia. That's also part of the atherosclerotic changes in the cerebral blood vessels. Myocardial infarction, I discussed already, it's a heart attack, and that's where the blood vessels that supply blood to the heart muscle are blocked off. That can also, it could be a chronic stable angina, it could be sudden cardiac death, and that can lead to heart failure as well. Atherosclerotic disease in the aorta can also cause, could be an aneurysm that could rupture. It could be mesenteric ischemia, where you have a low blood flow to the bowel. You could have renovascular disease, and that would be atherosclerotic changes in the vessels that supply blood to the kidneys. And that could lead to renal artery stenosis, which can give you very high blood pressure, or chronic kidney disease. Peripheral arterial disease. So atherosclerosis is not, it doesn't just target one part. Notice this plaque builds up all over. So if you've got buildup in the heart, you likely have buildup in your carotid arteries and your arteries in your legs. And arteries in the legs would be peripheral arterial disease, and that could cause what's called claudication. So when you start walking and using the leg muscles, they want more oxygen, but because the blood vessels have narrowed now that they have a buildup of plaque, you're not going to get that blood flow to those muscles, and they're going to start hurting. So you're going to have to stop because your legs are going to start burning and hurting. That could lead to amputation because you're not getting enough blood flow to the peripheral feet and the lower legs. And last but not least, impotence is also another form of cardiovascular disease. Atherosclerotic buildup in those blood vessels can also cause problems with erectile dysfunction. But that's a busy slide, but I like it because it's a good overall view of changes that we see in the body from atherosclerosis. So now we're going to move on to discussing specifically coronary artery disease and smoking. So smoking affects inflammatory pathways, and that leads to thrombosis, which is an increase in blood clotting in already narrowed arteries that are filled up with plaque. So it also makes the little plaques unstable, and those plaques can rupture, and the plaque or the thrombosis or the blood clot will build up in there, and it will completely clot off that vessel. So wherever that vessel is supposed to supply blood to, that heart muscle, it dies, or it starts having problems. It doesn't die right away, but I always tell my patients, it's kind of like, do you ever put a rubber band on your hand when you were a little kid and you saw your hand do all these changes, and then you take it off, ha ha ha, the blood returns? Well, you can't take that rubber band off, so to speak, when it's your heart. So that's ischemia, basically, and eventually that leads to cardiac death, and that's a heart attack. A smoker's chance of dying from a heart attack is 2 to 3 times greater than that of a non-smoker. I can't see on the yellow. very well. About 1 in 4 heart attacks is believed to be directly related to smoking. That's 25%. That's a lot when you think about it, because if you don't smoke and you eat a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet, which we've probably already discussed, that also leads to atherosclerosis, but smoking increases that significantly. Following a heart attack, a smoker's risk of sudden death is twice that of a non-smoker. And smoking is a much higher risk factor for heart attack and stroke than just high cholesterol, obesity, high blood pressure, or stress alone. So what are the benefits of quitting? People who quit smoking before the age of 50 reduce their risk of dying by half in the next 15 years compared with continuing smokers. So it's never too late. Quitting before the age of 35 can almost reverse the effects of smoking overall. And if you already have coronary artery disease, your risk of a second heart attack and possible sudden death decreases when you quit smoking. So other ways smoking affects the heart. Smoking causes blood platelets to clump with a high risk to form clots. And that's what I was talking about when the plaque ruptures, that the blood starts clotting in the vessel. This can cause spasms in the coronary arteries, which can reduce blood flow to the heart. And smoking also can cause irregular heartbeats. It can contribute to tachyarrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, and these are all irregular heartbeats that would benefit if you were to stop smoking. Smoking also lowers the LDL cholesterol. As you recall, LDL is the lousy cholesterol that you actually want low. And because you're smoking, remember the carbon monoxide? It reduces oxygen in those red blood cells, so you're also reducing the oxygen content that's delivered to those muscles when they need them. So what are the benefits of quitting there? After your first year of not smoking, your risk of heart disease decreases by half. Also, your risk of having a heart attack decreases when you stop smoking. And after 15 years of not smoking, your risk of death from heart disease is the same that if you had never smoked at all. So 15 years out, you're doing much, much better. So we're going to now talk about strokes and smoking. So narrowing of the carotid arteries, those are the blood vessels that flow there from the heart. The blood will go through the carotid arteries up to the brain. When you have enough blockage in the carotid arteries, the blood flow is blocked. A piece of that can break off and it can go into the brain, and that can cause a stroke. If either carotid artery is blocked enough, it may need to be surgically corrected. That's called a carotid endarterectomy. Some people call it a rotor-rooter. Also, increased blood clotting could lead to an embolic stroke as well. And, there are two kinds of stroke. One is a hemorrhagic stroke, where you bleed into your brain, and then there's the embolic stroke, which is a blood clot. 90% of strokes are embolic strokes. Benefits of quitting is the risk of former smokers it largely disappears by 2 to 4 years after cessation. So you don't even have to wait 15 years at this point. So you're already starting to decrease the progression of the buildup of atherosclerosis and also the blood clotting that could lead to strokes. Next, we're going to talk about smoking and hypertension, or high blood pressure. So nicotine found in cigarettes raises your blood pressure. It also triggers adrenaline release, which further increases your heart rate and likelihood of having a heart attack. Remember how I said you can have irregular heart rhythms? This is one of the mechanisms of the tachyarrhythmias. In addition to nicotine increasing the blood pressure, narrowing of the arteries via atherosclerosis also adds to a higher arterial pressure overall. So the body's inflammatory response to smoking causes your blood vessels to constrict. And this is called endothelial dysfunction. And it doesn't just happen to your heart, it happens to all your blood vessels. So this increases resistance of blood flow, and this is associated with the development of high blood pressure because it takes more force for the blood to go through those stiffened, plaque-built up arteries. So what are the benefits of quitting? In as little as 1 day after quitting smoking, blood pressure begins to drop, the risk of heart disease. So in just 1 day, you can make a difference. So take it 1 day at a time, and it's worth trying. Smoking and peripheral arterial disease. So narrowing of the blood vessels result in insufficient blood flow to the arms, legs, hands, and feet. That's also known as peripheral arterial disease. Smoking is the leading preventable cause of peripheral arterial disease, which can result in amputation. A lot of people think that merely diabetes causes peripheral arterial disease. Smoking is a big contributor to it. Atherosclerosis due to smoking does not readily regress. Unfortunately, it can take up to 30 years to see the following cessation to see the benefits of smoking cessation with peripheral arterial disease. So of all the effects that I'm talking about tonight, peripheral arterial disease is the one that's most slowly reversed. That's why it's so important to just not even start. Or if you're doing it now, stop right now to arrest further progression. So the best efforts, because it takes so long for peripheral arterial disease to be reversed after smoking cessation, most of our efforts should really focus on adolescents and trying to educate them about the dangers of smoking and to not even start. That's the most important aspect of addressing peripheral arterial disease. Smoking and aortic aneurysms. So due to hypertension and endothelial dysfunction I talked about, the aortic aneurysms are another consequence of smoking. That's basically an outpouching. Here, this is the abdominal aorta. So it's a bulge that's formed it could be formed in any area of the aorta, and that's the main artery that distributes blood to the rest of the body. If ruptured, it can result in sudden death. We can also see it in the thoracic area, which is up here. Anywhere up here, we can see it in the archway too. And those are all equally dangerous. Nearly all deaths from this condition are caused from smoking. Let that sink in. Benefits of quitting. The relative risk of aortic abdominal aneurysm was like that of never smoking by 25 years following smoking cessation. So this one takes a while. It's kind of like peripheral arterial disease, but it's worth a shot. So, smoking and secondhand smoke. What is secondhand smoke? So, breathing in smoke from another person's cigarette can also be damaging, and this is what's referred to as secondhand smoke. So, it can even affect pets in the house. Secondhand smoke can cause the same sorts of illnesses as actual smoking, especially if you're not exposed to cigarettes often, which is why they had to come up with laws not allowing smoking in public areas. In some cases, childhood asthma has been linked to breathing in someone else's cigarette smoke. There is no safe level of smoke exposure. Secondhand smoke effect is nearly as large as smoking for heart disease itself. It's a curvilinear dose response, which means they both go together and then eventually the smoking takes off and then it deviates from the secondhand smoke, because obviously you're getting it all the time if you're the smoker. Rapid mechanisms of action are resulted from that, and those include the endothelial dysfunction. That's the tissue in the blood vessels. The platelet aggregation, that's where the platelets clump together and cause clotting, and inflammation that increases atherosclerotic disease. Smoking gets up to 16 times more toxic as it ages and changes, and that's what's called third-hand smoke. Ventilation is not a solution. Sometimes people will they'll be driving and they'll let the window down, or they'll get those air purifiers in the house, or they'll smoke by a window. It's all bad stuff. It's especially to people who aren't used to it. So last but not least, I'm not going to talk specifically about methods of smoking cessation. That in and of itself can be an entire lecture. But I peppered a little bit of the benefits of smoking cessation. This is more like a summation. That's a very busy slide, but it's a really good one. I love it because it talks about from 20 minutes from the last time you smoke all the way to 15 years, all the changes all the benefits of each increment of time to stopping smoking. Cardiovascular and pulmonary benefits are immediate. Your cancer risk is lowered after a few years, and reducing cigarettes is not enough. Some people say, oh, well, I used to smoke 2 packs a day. I now only smoke half a pack a day. Not good enough. Your body will compensate to the nicotine, and it will still have its negative effects. You have to be on a stable, non-daily pattern. You should not be smoking at all. So to review, what ways is smoking dangerous for a smoker and those around them? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the whole thing, the peripheral arterial disease, atherosclerosis, and then around how is it bad for those around him? Secondhand smoke, asthma in children. It's really it's a really awful habit. So, what harmful substances do cigarettes contain? Yeah. Benzene, nicotine, yeah, yes, yeah, that's pretty crazy. And how can smoking damage your body? Well, we just talked about, the whole cardiovascular system, but in other ways too. So, any questions? So because it's a wean, and nicotine is very addictive, and to go cold turkey is very difficult for many people. You actually go through withdrawals, which is why I didn't touch on this, but vaping is so dangerous, because some people think, vaping, it's a healthier way of smoking. Well, I could literally talk to you for 2 hours about vaping. I'd be on a real big soapbox because, remember when tobacco first came out, they talked about Philip Morris and how they marketed to children. It's that and worse with e-cigarettes. When they have flavors like gummy bear and cotton candy, they are not marketing to adults. But the important thing about the nicotine in patches is they're able to wean them down and eventually take them off. So I did research with the e-cigarettes and smoking by using e-cigarettes to take you off of smoking. Actually, the cardiovascular effects from vaping are not as bad as cigarettes themselves. That's not to say that the chemicals in the vaping don't affect other parts of your body beyond cardiovascular. Remember, this lecture focused on cardiovascular effects. I didn't touch on any others. And there are a lot of chemicals that are unregulated in vaping that are not, that we don't know about. in the manufacture of them. And vaping is much worse for your lungs than smoking is actually. So the problem with vaping is when you switch from smoking to vaping, you're still addicted to the nicotine, and most people switch one bad habit for another bad habit and never stop. They like the hand-to-mouth, they like the smoking, and they never stop. Whereas if they were to use a nicotine patch or the nicotine gum, they eventually will wean themselves off. They won't wean themselves off of vaping, and studies have shown it doesn't help. So that's pretty much all I had for today, and if there are no other questions. Yes. As a safe alternative, as I know, and it's anything but. Correct. The worst thing that, in the little research that I did on vaping for this, even though I didn't put it in the topic, it's a gateway for kids. So we're getting, the kids start smoking, or start vaping, they're addicted to the nicotine, their brains are developing, and they're exposing their developing brains to this nicotine, and they're starting to, it gives them a little buzz, and it gets them more interested in more buzzes and substances that are going to increase that buzz. So it's something that as adults we really need to be very candid in talking to kids about vaping and its dangers, because kids think that it's safer than smoking because it doesn't stink. You can hide it more easily, but you're only fooling yourself because it's worse in your lungs. Especially what I read about the flavorings that they use. It's a fatty substance that deposits in the lungs, and it can increase blood clotting. And in one study I read, it was a young 20-year-old guy. He was an engineering student. He ended up developing blood clots in his lungs, and it took almost 9 months to figure it out. They kept treating him for pneumonia, and he's a healthy young guy, and he ended up having to go on anticoagulants for about 6 months and steroids to completely reverse it. And of course, he had to stop vaping. But you don't play with vaping. It's very, very dangerous. And the chemicals in there, even the ones that supposedly are labeled on there, from one pack to another within the same brand, they're completely different. It's very misleading. So I was very glad when they pulled Juul, which is the number, they were the original makers of the vaping cartridge thing. They pulled them off the market. And so now they're not supposed to be making the cotton candy and the mango flavored anymore. They now can only do menthol and mint, I think. A boring flavor, I guess, which isn't as engaging to kids, but it still looks very cool, so they do it.
2 questions from an online viewer. I know you discussed about smoking and in the effect in the cardiovascular system. I guess this is a side note question. Is there any algorithm on how to quit smoking? That's the first question. And the second one, smoking in pregnancy, what are the consequences?
So remember we talked about how the nicotine is a stimulant, and it increases the heart rate, and it narrows those blood vessels, and it increases your blood pressure. So when a woman is pregnant, you're going through a lot of physiological changes that are very taxing on the heart, which is why pregnancy is best on young women. And when your blood vessels are narrowed, you're decreasing the blood flow within the heart, but it doesn't just work in the heart, it works everywhere. So when you think about the blood flow to the placenta and to the baby, you're decreasing that as well. And that can have really deleterious effects to the child. What was the other question before the pregnancy one?
What's the best algorithm to quit smoking?
The best algorithm to quit. This is why I didn't want to go into too much smoking cessation
Because that's a whole.
Yeah, it's a whole
topic
nother
that
thing.
you have to
Yeah,
discuss.
because, I mean, Chantix was a good one, but they pulled that one off the market because there were ingredients in there that caused cancer. But they have a generic form of it, which I have prescribed, and some patients say that it works. Some patients have told me that when they take that, the cigarettes taste disgusting, and that's why they quit. So I don't know if that's the mechanism by which it works. But there are a lot of ways. The CDC, if you go on the CDC website, they have really good resources. There are 1-800 numbers you can call. There's texting apps to quit smoking where they'll send you every single day a text reminder of encouragement, where you can text with experts who can help you, give you support as you're trying to quit smoking. But the CDC has a really good website on smoking cessation and methods to help you do that.
Another question just came. What are the steps our government is doing about smoking?
Well, smoking right now, as far as cigarettes, they intervened, remember, with the whole Philip Morris and the lawsuits. So they regulated the advertising more. They couldn't use Joe Camel, the cartoon, anymore to market to children. And I don't see advertising on television of cigarettes. I've seen a lot of alcohol lately, but I don't see cigarettes advertised on television anymore. And it's not really glamorized like it used to be, you know, Virginia Slims, we've come a long way, baby. I don't see those advertisements as much anymore.
Thank you. But in my experience, you know, when you're trying to go to smoking cessation and alcohol, they are almost at the same degree. They go into this cold turkey and all the process of withdrawal. They're both equally very hard to stop.
So with cold turkey with alcohol, depending upon how long you've been addicted to alcohol, could be very dangerous. It could lead to seizures, and that you really need a medical professional involved with that. Smoking cessation, you can do it. You can do it cold turkey, and it won't have, other than being in a really bad mood, it won't really harm you in the way that alcohol withdrawal will, if you can overcome that addiction. But it's a pretty hard addiction to quit cold turkey.
When a person goes into withdrawal and they're both smoker and a drinker, could you even tell which one are they withdrawing from?
Well, the ones that have a greater effect on physiologically on them are likely alcohol. And in the hospital, we end up giving them IV fluids and medications. Some of them go into seizures, and we have to give them anti-seizure medications. You see changes in blood pressure that require medication as well. Changes in heart rhythm. You don't see those things with nicotine withdrawal. That's more alcohol related. You have a question?
One of the questions from online asked about help for quitting. One of the simple things I've heard, or two of the simple things I've heard, is whenever you feel like smoking, you get a glass of really cold water, ice in the water or whatever, and you sip on it. This will help to eliminate the desire for the cigarette. But you need to drink it a lot because the water helps to flush out the nicotine in the system. The next thing they said that you can do also is to chew sugar-free gum whenever you feel like smoking. So are these still true?
Personally, I think it goes based person to person. I mean, if you were to talk to someone who'd been smoking for 10 years, like if one of my patients, and I tell them, hey, drink some cold water, they'll laugh at me. They really will. They've tried the nicotine patches, the nicotine gum. They have a really hard time. But the number one thing is, I tell them, I can't want it more than you do. And when you're ready to really stop and you really want to try something, let me know, because until then, you're not going to be successful. But remember, 20 minutes after you stop smoking, you're already seeing changes happening. So you just have to, you keep quitting until you stop. It's a work in progress. So if at first you don't succeed, you try again, you keep doing it. And it's worth trying the cold water. I remember when we did SHIP, kicking the habit, like the caffeine habit and things as simple as nicotine, take a cold shower to try and, it's a diversion. It's kind of like a kid when they want one thing, you show them something else. This is a diversional tactic, and hopefully that could work. But it's something that requires a lot of effort on the part of the individual, and they really have to want to do it in order to be successful. Okie doke. Well, thank you so much for staying and staying awake. I appreciate it.
All right, I want to say thank you to Sister Patricia for that information. And there was a question I had. Would it be safe to say that as of late we're seeing the smoking numbers go down? They're not as prevalent as they used to be? So it's just we're switching one for another. So the habit is still there. And like we had talked about, the vaping, one of the big problems with it is that it's unregulated, right? There's almost no oversight to a lot of it. And so you could find almost anything in it. And so it's not a good thing. In any form, smoking anything is not going to be a good thing. So I know that my dad quit, and he had tried several times to quit. And then all of a sudden, one day, he just said, I'm not smoking anymore. And that was it. And he never smoked again. But it takes a great deal of willpower to come to that point and then just simply not smoke again. So it can be done, but a lot of people struggle with it, trying to kick that habit because their bodies are craving what the cigarettes have. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. True. You see the puff of vapor, but it's not the same as cigarette smoke. It doesn't have the same smell. It doesn't have the same anything, and so it's much easier to hide. I think that's true, and so it's just trading one for another, which is unfortunate. So, but sure. Right.
So you mentioned Juul and that they were pulled off the market. I don't vape, so I'm just curious why them and nobody else. So what was it about the Juul that caused them to be pulled?
We're trading mics so that everyone can hear.
They were the leaders in manufacturing them, at least here in the U.S., by the way. They haven't been banned worldwide, but they were the leaders here. They came out. They were one of the first ones to come out. They were the most famous ones, and among the kids, that's the brand that they went after the most because they had the most delicious flavors. And so I think they marketed heavily to the children, and that's why I think our government went so fiercely after them, righteously so.
So I just wanted to add, if I can, we've been talking about, we started with our 8 laws of health and the fact that we can violate them for a certain amount of time and then we start to see the effects. But every time we try to reorient ourselves and go back to following them again, our bodies start to heal. And when we see the statistics on smoking, it's amazing how quickly the body can start to rebound. I mean, there can be long-term effects if you've smoked for a long time, but the body can rebound fairly quickly. And it's the same thing with these other reversible chronic diseases that we talk about. Our bodies have the ability to heal themselves. We have to simply take away the cause of the disease. And once we do that, the Lord has built that within each and every one of us, that we have our body has the ability to heal itself. And many times in short order. In 20 minutes, we start to see the effects of stopping smoking. If we have inflammation in our joints and we go off the products that are causing a great deal of that inflammation, we're not talking years in the process, we're talking weeks at times. And so it's amazing the way that the Lord has made us and our body's ability to do those things. So every time we take a step to better health, to following the 8 laws and better health, we pay dividends are paid in that regard, and we will live better lives for it. So thank you, sister. We appreciate it very much. And thank you to everyone who joined us. If you have any other questions, please send them in to Sister Nida by her email or by her telephone. Text them to her, and we'll be happy to answer them. Oh, sister?
I just want to answer the question that was sent after our presentation last night. It's not related to smoking. The question was, can stress cause cancer? So with the National Cancer Institute, they will not answer you yes or no. But there is a reason behind it. That's why people are saying that stress can cause cancer, because when you're under stress, you go into depression, you adopt a bad lifestyle habits, you don't exercise, you have bad choices with the food, you probably tend to get a cigarette or smoke and get addicted. And those are one of the risk factors for, having cancer. So that's the reason.
The stress response itself increases catecholamine response. Yes, but catecholamines affect the heart too. So it increases blood pressure, and so it increases heart disease and inflammation, like you said. And it also suppresses the immune system. These are steroids. Our own body makes these steroids. Well, when we take steroids, extrinsic steroids, it suppresses the immune system. So when we have a rush of catecholamines, we end up having immunosuppression. So that indirectly, I think, can affect cancer. Which is why I remember when COVID first came out, it was important that you get plenty of rest. Rest was important because when we're sleeping, our bodies shut down and we don't have that catecholamine response. It's the only time where we're really not stressing out, because we're asleep. So that is why, that's how stress can affect the body adversely.
Any more questions?
Any more questions? We'll catch it tomorrow. We'll make sure to get it. All right, I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank everyone for joining us online. Like I said, if you have questions, please send them in. We will absolutely answer them and do our very best. And we invite you to join us tomorrow night, either here in person or online, and we will continue on our series of reversing debilitating chronic diseases. So if you'll bow your heads with me as we pray. Father in heaven, we just thank you again for the opportunity to learn. Father, there are so many things in this world around us that work to degrade our health, to challenge our bodies, to stress our bodies, as we were talking. And it has effects. But Father, you are the great physician. And your desire is that we are healed, we live good lives with you, full lives. And so, Father, as we continue down this journey, I pray that you will continue to fill us with your Spirit, help us to understand, and help us to make the corrections that are necessary in our lives. We pray these things in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.